So I chose to do my community overview on Bethel, Alaska. The name that the original Central Yupik Alaska natives had given this community was Mumtreklugimut, meaning the smokehouse people, in reference to the many smokehouses for the fish caught in the nearby Kuskokwim River. It is a small town located in southwest Alaska, about 40 miles inland from the Bering Sea and within the Yukon Delta National Wildlife Refuge, which is about 400 miles west of Anchorage. Bethel is part of the unorganized boroughs of Alaska, meaning it is not part of any of Alaska's 19 organized boroughs. Instead, it is defined as one of 10 census areas, with it being part of the Bethel census area, which encompasses 45,504 square miles of land. For reference, the town of Bethel itself is made up of roughly 43.8 square miles of land and 5 square miles of water. And for some history on the area, 13 years after the U.S. acquired Alaska, the 1880 U.S. Census reported 41 people living in Bethel, which at the time was an Alaska Commercial Company trading post. Over time, a post office was established, and Bethel soon became an essential trading, transportation, and distribution center for the region, which attracted natives from the surrounding villages to move into the area. The city was officially incorporated into the U.S. in 1957, and today Bethel has a population of roughly 6,179, according to the 2020 census. The demographics show that about 35.6% of the citizens are 18 years of age or less, while 7.9% are over the age of 65. About 60.19% of the inhabitants are Alaska Native or American Indian, while 25.03% are white, 2.03% are Black or African American, and 1% are Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. There's a roughly equal distribution of men and women within the town. So there's still a strong sense of Yupik culture and other traditional Alaska Native practices within the town. The Yupik language is still predominant in the area, and subsistence activities and commercial fishing are still a core part of people's lives in Bethel. There are also annual events like the annual 300 sled dog race or the annual Kamai event, which in the Yupik language means a warm, genuine hello. It's a 3-day event involving over 450 dancers, drummers, and singers of all ages gathering to celebrate Yupik tradition. Now, as far as infrastructure and transportation within the town goes, Bethel is actually inaccessible via traditional means, as there is no road system leading into it. It must be accessed either via plane or boat, or even dog sled if it's winter. Within Bethel, only about 16 total miles of road exist within the town, and only 10 miles of that road is paved. This is one of the reasons why Bethel has more cabs per capita than any other city in the U.S. It's about 1 cab for every 80 people, as it's just impractical to own and drive a car in the area. There are 38 miles of total public road in the area connecting Bethel to several of the nearby villages. And in the winter, there's an additional 28-mile ice road on the Kuskokwim River connecting Bethel to more of its neighboring villages. Bethel has the 3rd largest airport in the state, servicing to and from Anchorage and the 56 surrounding villages. And it also contains a port for ocean vessels, the Bethel Cargo Dock, a petro port, small boat harbor, float plane beach, and the seawall. The median gross rent of housing unit in Bethel is about $1,352 a month, and there's on average 3.83 persons per household. 73.3% of those households have broadband internet subscriptions. The median household annual income is about $53,553 a year, with 23.5% of the population living under the poverty line in the Bethel area. 16.8% of the population are uninsured, and 7.2% population under the age of 65 have a disability of some kind. So available healthcare services in Bethel include the Bethel Public Health Center and itinerant nursing, which provides services such as family planning and pregnancy testing, immunizations, STD screenings, TB screenings, public health education, infectious disease investigation and emergency preparedness, and community assessments. There's also the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta Regional Hospital and its associated clinics, which is a 50-bed hospital that provides inpatient acute care services, as well as its clinics providing dental, physical therapy, optometry, behavioral health, and family medicine services, among other things. See, there's the Bethel Family Clinic, which provides men, women, and children health services, as well as treatments for acute and chronic respiratory issues, infections, and other diseases like diabetes, hypertension, etc. They also provide full screen lab tests, physicals, and behavioral health services. And then there is also the McCann Treatment Center, which is a residential psychiatric and addiction treatment center in the area, as is the Phillips Ayaknervik Treatment Center, which also provides addiction treatment services. So, speaking of addiction treatment centers, one of the top health issues in Bethel area are drug, tobacco, and alcohol abuse, as it's an issue in all of Alaska. Fortunately, however, rates of tobacco use, binge drinking, and drug opioid use in all age groups have all decreased from 2011 to 2018, according to gathered statistics. The citizens of Bethel are also at higher risk of injury and death due to their outdoor lifestyles and consistent use of all-terrain personal vehicles like ATVs and snow machines, as well as their exposure to harsh elements in the Alaskan winters. Another public health concern cited in the Bethel area is public exposure to substances called polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs. Now, these are a class of chemicals manufactured for their heat, water, and stain-resistant properties, and have a wide array of industrial applications, but they are slow to break down and are able to be ingested by people through drinking contaminated water, eating contaminated food, or being in contact with PFA-containing products. PFAs can have long-term effects on the GI, cardiovascular, immune, endocrine, and reproductive systems, as well as affecting the liver, kidneys, and even development of children. And another public health concern is exposure to lead. Many homes, buildings, and whatnot built before the late 1970s have lead-based paint, and many older plumbing systems have lead plumbing. There's also abundance of lead fishing weights in the Bethel area, all of which result to increased exposure to lead by the population. Elevated blood lead levels primarily affects the nervous system of both adults and children, but can also affect almost every organ of the body in a negative way. And finally, so the most prevalent health crisis occurring in the Bethel area, and one that's basically shared with the whole world, is, of course, the COVID-19 epidemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, 1 in 3 residents in the Bethel census area have been infected, with a total of 5,381 cases reported. The Bethel census area is considered extremely high risk for unvaccinated individuals, and the local Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta Regional Hospital has been overwhelmed by the sheer number of patients, as well as the high level of acuity of those patients coming throughout this entire pandemic. And so, certainly under the current circumstances, I think more resources devoted to relieving some of the burden that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the Bethel healthcare system would be extremely beneficial, but it's otherwise difficult to determine what other resources that don't currently exist in the Bethel community could feasibly be implemented. I like that they already have behavioral health and addiction treatment centers to address the issues of drug, alcohol, and tobacco use that already exist there. And so, I suppose that I would implement more public health education regarding substance use and safe outdoor practices, and would like to implement programs that work with community leaders so that the town can be assessed for sources of PFA and lead contamination, and funding could be provided to address those problematic sources. So I think what surprised me most while doing this project was simply learning about a place that is as secluded as Bethel is and how it functions within that seclusion. We live in such an interconnected world that it is difficult to imagine a place that's not accessible by any roads and being hundreds of miles away from the nearest city with hospitals that provide true high acuity care. I don't know that I would like to live or work in a place such as this, as it seems like your variety of patient population would be very limited, as would the variety of jobs available to a nurse in the area. I would certainly do respect public health nursing, but I don't know if that's the kind of job that would be right for me, and it seems like the kind of job that would be the most influential role you could take on as a nurse in an area like Bethel. But yeah, it was certainly a pleasure to learn about a community like this, and it certainly given me a greater insight into the health disparities that exist between a rural area like Bethel and an urban area like Anchorage. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you. And here is a list of my references here.